Will Baser Planning Commission to order?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Jim? Here. Janice?
Here.
Stacy?
Here.
Cecil? Here. Blake?
Yes.
Tom Lally is absent. And I'm here. Do we have any declarations to make as far as communications, discussions, any of that? Item 3, new business. PSP 003-23. Are we doing site plan? Okay. So scratch that.
But do we have to table
I
it?
think you would need to, I'm sorry, I think we do want you to open it because we have noticed for a public hearing at the applicant's request. And so
Okay.
we would request that you consider opening the public hearing and then continuing it to a date certain.
Okay.
Which would be November their next meeting.
Okay, thank you. PSP 003-23, site plan for Dollar Tree on Block 1, Lot 2 of Wolf Creek Junction. Final plat, phase 1. Public hearing is required to be continued to November 14th, 2023. Planning Commission meeting. I'll entertain a motion to open public hearing.
So moved.
Second,
I'll second.
all in favor of Blake?
Yes.
Cecil? Yes. Stacy?
Yes.
Janice?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
I vote yes. Public hearing is now open. Do you have anybody that wishes to comment? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So I think, I'm so sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, Chairman. If we could, we would respectfully request your consideration to leave the public hearing open to.
Oh,
to
I'm
the
sorry.
November 14th, 2023 Planning Commission.
We will leave this item open until the public, or till the planning commission meeting on November 14th, 2023. That said, we'll move on. Item 4. ADL 008-23-A. Text amendment to Baser zoning regulations, Article 7, district regulations, plan districts, and Article 12, plan review procedures. Public hearing is required.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Planning Commission. I appreciate you allowing me to attend by Zoom today. I'm sorry I'm not there in person with you, but I think we're going to have a great time regardless. I would like to share my screen though, so that we can go through these items together. Give me 1 second here. Okay, move my face out of the way. Okay. We have been talking about this pretty large text amendment for about 9 months. So here you have it in all its glory. Can you see that okay?
Mhm.
Yep.
All right. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So what we are proposing to do here is a couple of things. One, we want to streamline the process for final or preliminary and final development plans. And we also want to clarify and streamline the process for site plans while making it clear that those are two very separate items. Under our current regulations, the site plan requirements and the planned development requirements are very muddled. And it oftentimes seems like they are essentially one thing and they apply across the board to everything, which is really quite untrue. Planned developments and planned development plans should only be used for planned developments, right? So a planned residential district, a planned industrial district, or also the mixed use districts, and we've incorporated that as well. But development plans and the public hearing process and such that goes along with those are not necessarily, or are not at all, appropriate for, say, a commercial zoning district that is just zoned CP2. That's not a planned district. That is a commercial zoning district where, let's use an example. We'll just use the Taco Bell example because that's one of the most recent ones we've had. Taco Bell was an allowed use on that lot, and that allowed use was determined at the time that the lot was zoned to CP2. And so the additional burden of, one, making a public notification, but then two, taking the site plan to the Planning Commission for approval can add on up to as much as 45 days to the development process. And again, it's not required by state statute in any way, shape, or form. And most municipalities do not take that approach. Rather, they have strict criteria that's very clear that has to be administratively reviewed and approved, assuming the use, again, is an allowed use within that zoning district. Now, this doesn't mean that they can have deviations, because staff can't grant deviations on our own unless there are specific deviations which are allowed to be granted by the zoning regulations. So does that make sense first, that that's what we're attempting to do here?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So the red, as you know, you have two separate documents that you've been given that are essentially the same thing, but the first is the red-lined document that shows that blue text is new code language that wasn't there before. Red strike through is text to be deleted, and most of the time that was text that was also being moved to a different section. And then the green underline is existing code language that, again, is being deleted from one section and relocated to the other. And I'm sure you noticed that much of that green underline just so happened to correspond pretty nicely to the red strike through. So we're not really substantially changing the requirements that we have for either planned districts or the site plan process. We're just changing some of the processes that are associated with them. Some of the biggest changes that we talked about removing the requirement for a public hearing for site plans. Also, little things we cleaned up. We don't need 12 paper copies of anything ever. And then also changing the deadline from 30 to 45 days in order to make sure there's appropriate review time. Those are some of just kind of the little things that we've cleaned up, and there was plenty more as well. But I do not want to belabor your time by any stretch of the imagination, but I do want to briefly go through these changes and give you an opportunity to ask any questions. If I'm going too fast, just stop me. If you can't hear me, let me know and I will try to speak louder. And without further ado, oh gosh, can you see that at all?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, perfect.
We have our books.
Okay, so let's just work through the redlined document. And again, I'm not going to go through this, word by word by any stretch of the imagination, but we've obviously under Article 7, we've added a little bit of code language, of new language here is the blue. This green has been just moved from one section to here. You can see we've got a couple of little things where we've just changed some language, but we also, I want to state that with a development plan, and we're starting with the development plan, and we'll get to the site plan here in a few minutes, but an application for rezoning to a planned district, just like always, still requires a preliminary development plan. That hasn't been changed. What has been changed is the approval of the preliminary development plan and the length of time that it's valid. The filing of an approval of a final development plan has also been amended the preliminary development plan shall be valid for an additional year in the event that that's how long they can be granted an extension. Sorry, that's been decreased. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. The extension has been decreased from 2 years to 1 year. The original approval has been increased from 1 year to 2 years. And 1 year to 18 months on the final development plan. We also, under the planned district, you can see we are proposing that grocery stores in a planned residential district can be increased to a square footage of 20,000 square feet, which is a fairly small grocery store, but we did quite a bit of market research on this, and 15,000 square feet pretty much limits you to about an Aldi and not much more than that. So in the planned residential district, we wanted to allow a little bit more flexibility in the event that a grocery store ever wanted to come to town. We also have decreased the minimum percentage of open space, and we've defined what open space is. It is defined in Article 6 of our regulations, so we specifically reference that. And with that definition in mind, we've decreased it from 25% to 20%, because the definition of open space is pretty strict, and a quarter of your land needing to be open space is fairly significant, we thought. Let's see here. Here we get to we're moving all of this, so I'll go through this really quickly. Currently, as you can see, all these items are all listed under Article 7, which is an inappropriate place for them to be listed. Article 7 is really your bulk regulations, so your setbacks, your lot area requirements, your road frontage requirements, but your procedures are all listed in Article 12 for site plan, and so that's why we wanted to move this all to that zoning district, or sorry, to that chapter, so that it's uniform throughout the book. The black all remains, as you can see, the black, these are all your bulk regulations that are currently in existence. We're not proposing to change that. Moving. Sorry if I'm making you seasick. All right. Okay. You can also see here, we just had some inconsistencies, like on item C, procedures, where we just found inconsistencies in the code that we're proposing to strike so that it makes sense going forward. There are some formatting changes that you can see over there. Again, other than those very minor things, these district requirements all stay the same. We're not proposing any sort of major change to the bulk requirements at all.
Crystal,
Yeah,
a question on page 31-79. Use limitations. Each business must be conducted entirely within an enclosed building. How does that relate to a restaurant that wants outside seating? Is this, am I misreading something?
can you tell me which letter you're on so I can get to it faster?
Use limitations, item G.
It's the mixed
Sub-
use category.
Yeah,
So
Okay.
mixed use
Mhm.
neighborhood district
Yeah,
talks about, again, that page right there, very top,
mhm.
use limitations.
Oh, I just lost
I-
my thing.
Use limitations under G, item A. You scroll up a little bit.
Okay.
There you
Okay,
go,
sorry,
right
there we
there,
go. Yep,
very top, first sentence.
yeah,
It says each business must conduct business entirely within closed building. How does that relate to a restaurant that wants to do outside seating?
yeah, that's a great question, and that's something that we may very well need to follow up on, because you're not wrong that there's quite a bit of appeal to have outdoor seating for particular types of restaurants. So that's a note that we should make.
Okay.
And that may be something that we come back and amend. And that's a pretty, nothing here is just absolutely set in stone. As you very well know, I think over the coming months and probably even years, there will be things that we have to tweak to this, but yeah, that's a great catch. Commissioner Gallion, and we'll talk about it internally and see if that's a change that we need to make in the foreseeable future.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Okay. Again, this is just cleanup, but the black is all text that remains. Okay, and then we get to Article 12, Development Plan and Site Plan Procedures. And this 12.03, the plan review schedule, this all pertains to single family and two family residential, and this has not changed. What has changed is this section 12.04, the blue text. But you can see that this blue text applies to the R3, the CP1, CP2, I1, I2, MH1, MH2, and RV zoning districts. The MH1 and the MH2, those are mobile home districts. We do have that zoning classification in our zoning regulations, but to my knowledge, we don't have any actual property, any property that's been actually zoned to mobile home 1 or mobile home 2 or RV for that matter. So this is, like I was talking about, these are those districts or those tracts of land that have already been zoned to these commercial uses or R3 or the industrial. So these are not requests for a rezoning. This is, again, think of like the Taco Bell that we recently had come through. This is clear that all applications shall be reviewed and approved administratively by the planning and zoning director. And I think it's really important to note that while it says the planning and zoning director, there are a lot of hands and eyes that will be on these documents, specifically our municipal services director and also our engineering, our on-call engineering firm that is responsible for reviewing the engineering aspect of these components. So it's not just the planning and zoning director reviewing these things. It's, like I said, a number of people reviewing them, also making sure that they're appropriately reviewed for fire safety. And we have an internal process for that that's been working really well. We clarify here that an approved site plan is valid for 1 year. And then we get down to the site plan submittal requirements. This is a little bit more robust than what we currently have. And that's by design, again, because we are requiring these items to come through or allowing these items to come through administratively. We want to make sure that items are very thoughtfully designed and reviewed, and that when they get that final stamp of approval, things like traffic and drainage and parking and landscaping and architectural design standards have all been considered. And then in the event, like I said previously, in the event that the developer requests deviations from any of those items, staff cannot approve those. They would need to go either to the Planning Commission or the City Council, or even to the Board of Zoning Appeals, depending upon what the request is. So just so that that's clear, staff cannot grant any deviations if it's not already allowed in the zoning district. In the zoning regulations, we can't grant that. So again, you can see this includes, a photometric study, which we don't currently require. It requires the cut sheet for the freestanding light fixtures and poles. It requires the existing and proposed drainage areas. It requires the landscaping plan. It requires the architectural design standards. And I think one of the most important things is this item number right here. Sorry, I can't see that great. Traffic study is required by the city engineer, and this project specific requirements should be discussed at the pre-application meeting. We do have an adopted traffic policy that we brought online about 5 or 6 months ago. And so that has to be submitted along with the site plan. So again, we are accounting for any traffic. And then in the event that a use would generate traffic that is more than a location has been designed for, then we would have to talk about improvements that need to be made. So again, those items are going to be addressed during the site plan process. And then these are all the items here. This was our original site plan list. You can see the site plan list we have now is much more robust. And then we get down to the preliminary development plan submittal requirements. Again, we've changed it from 30 days to 45 days. Most of this text here has just been moved from that Article 7. We've added a few things like computation of usable open space. Sorry. Okay, here's where we talk about the applicant shall file a final development plan application with required documents for at least the first phase of development within 2 years after approval of the preliminary development plan. Previously, that was 1 year. And so we've extended that to 2 years. We think that that is appropriate given, development can just take time. I think we all know that. And it's really unfortunate when a development plan expires. They're not cheap to produce. And then we say, oh, you have to do this all over again. So we've extended that to 2 years. Again, this text is all generally just moving. I think it's also important to note, currently our regulations talk about, I'm right here. Oh, right. Upon expiration of the final development plan, in the event that a final development plan were to expire, the matter shall be reviewed and an action may be initiated to have the plan zoning changed to the previous classification or some other zoning classification as required by the procedures listed in Article 18, which is our zoning amendment article. I think it's important to note that this does not mean that if a final development plan expires, the zoning automatically reverts. That's not what this is saying. It's saying that the planning commission or the city council or someone else could petition for the zoning to revert or to change, but you have to go back through the entire process. It doesn't just automatically happen. Again, some cleanup language here. And then one of the biggest changes that we have here is that the planning and zoning director can make a determination that the final development plan is in compliance with the preliminary development plan, so that the final development plan does not have to go back to the planning commission for approval. So essentially, as long as the final development plan is substantially like the preliminary development plan that did go through the entire process and was reviewed by the planning commission, the planning director can agree that it does meet those requirements and can authorize it to be finalized. If it doesn't meet those requirements, then staff will give them options of what they need to do. And one of those options is to go back to the planning commission. We had this happen a few months ago. I think you recall. Staff didn't feel comfortable making the decision on whether or not it was substantially in compliance. And so we brought it to the planning commission for the planning commission to make that decision. I did this afternoon, as I was going through this, notice one typo here that I missed. And so I need to change this, but it says under public hearing and action required, The planning commission shall hold a public hearing on any site development plan except as provided in section 12.03 above. That also needs to reference 12.04. So I'm going to make that change. That 12.04 is the site plan process. So I'll make that change before it goes to the city council for, in the event that the recommendation is approval on this. And then this public hearing and action by planning commission will pertain only again to those planned districts and not to the site plan requirements. Again, this is all just text that is moved. Lots of, and this here is all the same. We do have one change here. The approved final development plan shall become null and void 18 months from the date of approval if a building permit is not issued and the start of construction of at least the first phase of development of the approved final development plan has not begun. The planning commission can, of course, extend that period of approval time. I think it, again, just an important clarifier is if you have a development plan that say is 6 phases, well, you're not going to get 6 phases of development typically completed, you know, within 18 months. So you have 18 months to begin that first phase. Once that first phase has been completed, or sorry, that first phase has commenced, that development plan is valid for the life of the development unless they want to make changes. And that doesn't matter if it's the original developer or someone else who comes in and wants to take over, as long as they're willing to follow that approved development plan, they can do so. And that's it. And then we get to the nice clean document. Okay. Questions? Sorry, that was a lot. I know.
Any questions?
Okay. Not a big question, just a clarification, I guess, and a learning experience for me, Crystal. This is
Yeah.
Blake.
Mhm.
So you reference, for example, Article 18 within the contents of Article 7 in there somewhere. So where do I have a book of articles, or these, I guess these are all on the City of Basehor website under Planning Commission, where you go out and you read all these articles if you choose to and all that?
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question, Commissioner Waters. So yes, these articles are incorporated within the adopted zoning regulations. We can print off a copy of those regulations for anyone who would like a copy. And yes, they are available on our website.
So, yeah, I just gotta say, I've read through all of this once. It's just overwhelming. It's just overwhelming. And I mean, the bottom line is, for me, you know, I gotta trust the staff because I don't understand all this. And I understand simple things like, yeah, we don't need 12 hard copies, and, you know, you need to have the authority to make decisions when it's already fitting in. And it just common sense is telling you, you shouldn't have to go back to planning committee or planning commission or city, you know, for things that become redundant. And if I'm reading this correctly, that's kind of what this meeting's all about tonight, right? Is streamlining and doing away with duplications and making us more efficient in the administration of it. Is that pretty much it?
Yeah, in a nutshell, you got it.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, of
I
course.
would just add to that. That's a good point. There are really two, I'm Maria Garcia, the city attorney, two things that these amendments have accomplished in staff's opinion. One is the streamline, like you mentioned, Commissioner Waters, to have a lot of things at the administrative level so that you all don't get bogged down each time there's a new development, because we expect some, you know, more development coming to Basehor in the coming years. But the other thing, number two, is really consolidated certain sections and putting things in the correct bucket where they belong, because now they're kind of scattered throughout the code. So now we've kind of reorganized it so it makes sense. So it's really those two things: efficiency with streamlining, and then organization.
And so there's no, when we act on this, let's see. We open this to public hearing, right? Do that whole thing. So,
Yeah.
all right, so when it gets approved, if it gets approved, we haven't taken action on anything that's really major changes in what's already in the articles. It's just shifting and merging and making more efficient. I mean, is there anything major in here?
Yeah.
That, you know, you can point to that says, hey, this is a big deal. We haven't approved this before. This is a big deal, other than, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I'll defer to Crystal. I think the site plan requirements, that was one of the bigger items, but I'll.
The site plan, yeah.
Well, having been on the planning commission for quite a while, to me, one of the biggest changes is final plans not coming back to the planning commission.
Yeah.
Which makes sense.
Yeah.
In reality, that the planning director has the authority to go ahead and approve it, because basically we've already approved it anyway.
Thank you, John. That's,
So as opposed to delaying things, taking time for all that to come back to planning commission, because we only meet once a month. And that just reduces the delay for a developer to continue. So, Crystal, you have anything?
Yeah, no, Chairman Gallion, that's a great point. Yeah, and that certainly is it's a pretty big change. I will say that we did a lot of research, and the folks over at Olson helped me considerably with this, as well as our land use attorney, Pete Heaven. And that change is really in line with most other municipalities in the metro. And again, just to make it very clear, the planning director can only make that approval when the final development plan is substantially in compliance with the planning commission, or with the preliminary development plan that the planning commission has already acted upon. And I believe the code is definitely written so that if there is any question at all by the planning director, that it can go to the planning commission and say, hey, I want you to review this. I want you to make this call. So that is definitely a change. And then, as Maria stated, the changes to the site plan requirements, again, they are bulkier than they were previously, but those changes are for, like I said, one, to protect the city, to protect neighboring properties, and then also to make it really clear exactly what's expected. Currently, what we have is just, it's pretty vague. So now a developer knows exactly what they need to submit. And then along with that change, with that, kind of substantial change of practice, is that the site plans will no longer go to the planning commission for approval when they are in conformance with the zoning district and all of those requirements. Again, that's a practice that is implemented by most cities in the metro, and frankly, probably all over the country, because you have certain vested rights with your property dependent upon the zoning category that it has. And so while that is a change to the way that we handle things, it's not a change, in the way that business has been handled historically throughout other communities. But yes, Commissioner Waters, that was a really long-winded way to get to. The vast majority of these changes are simply cleaning up language, fixing typos, fixing formatting, and moving things, as Maria said, to the appropriate bucket. The changes are not substantive in that nature. It's just moving them from one section to another. So it's much more coherent. And I will tell you, when I first got here and I was reading through our regulations, and I'm certainly not a regulations guru, but I'm also not a novice. And I was really confused on how do you get from point A to point B. And if your planning director is pretty confused on how to get to point A to point B, developers might also be. So we feel these changes are in line, like I said, with other municipalities. And we're hopeful that these changes will really streamline the process and make it much easier to understand, going forward.
Any more questions?
no, thank you.
I'm good.
Yes. Any-
No, I just
Yep.
think that, having it, clear and concise and to the point would be beneficial in attracting developers to this area and not having to go through all the red tape. in, my experience in other municipalities, there was a lot of red tape and it ran people off. And, I think this is a good move.
Jim? you can-
Make it very, very clear.
Thank you.
And are all these changes in compliance with the comprehensive plan we approved back in December?
Yeah, that's a great question, Commissioner Owens. Again, they're not really changes that pertain to specific land use zoning districts. So this is more, that's kind of like this is the technical, like, requirements to get to development, whereas the comprehensive plan is kind of the guiding document, right? So in short, yes, there aren't any conflicts in that, but they're not really things that are these types of changes wouldn't typically be in conflict with your comprehensive plan, because your comprehensive plan normally, and ours does not, have procedure requirements. Again, it's a guiding document for the type of development that you want to see.
Yeah, that's what I thought, but I thought it'd be a good idea to ask.
Yeah, of course. It's an important document.
I for one believe that they're now, the decisions and the reviews are in the hands of people that need to make those. Because they're more familiar with the day-to-day operation of the day-to-day codes than we are. So I think it's a good deal to put that back into the hands of the people that are more well-versed at that than we are.
I would like, Mr. Chairman, just to compliment staff. So in my profession, I'm trying to think when this happened. 24 months ago, maybe 36 months ago, somewhere in there. But we consistently heard how hard it was to do business in the city of Basel with regard to permitting. It was taking forever, and you remember, I never hear that anymore. And, common sense is telling me what we're doing tonight is a step in the right direction. As Janice said, we want to be a community that has a reputation of being a community that is easy to do business in, not diff business in. And so I want to compliment you on the great progress that you all made in the last 2-3 years, whatever it's been, because I'm feeling it. And I know our borrowers are feeling it. So, yeah.
Anything else? Entertain a motion for public hearing.
I'll move that we open a public hearing.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Hi.
Cecil?
Yes.
Stacy?
Yes.
Janice?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Yes, public hearing is now open. Do we have anyone online? There's obviously no one here. I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make the motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Janice?
Yes.
Stacy?
Yes.
Cecil?
Yes.
Blake?
Yes.
I vote yes, public hearing is closed. I'll entertain a motion on text amendment to Basel zoning regulations, Article 7 district regulations, plan districts, and Article 12 plan review procedures.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve case number PADM 00823, text amended to Basel zoning regulations as stated.
I have a second.
I'll second.
And then I'll take a vote. Blake?
Yes.
Cecil?
Yes.
Stacy?
Yes.
Janet?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
I vote yes, motion passes 6-0. One absent. We have anything from staff? Anything else? Kristen?
Nope, that was it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye. Yes.
Cecil? Stacy?
Yes.
Janet?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Meeting's closed.
See you in April.
Yeah, have fun in Florida, man.
Good job.